Hi. Thanks so much for having us, and thanks for coming. My name is Kerrin McCadden. I'm going to tell a secret about my first poem. I think a good poem might keep its secrets, but I'll tell you the punchline of this poem. I'm going to read a poem called The Death of the Reader. I went through a period where I couldn't read books for a while, and I thought, well, it's because of my divorce, or, well, it's because of this crisis I'm having of heart with reading. I don't really know what it is, but the real secret is that it was because I needed bifocals and things weren't quite in focus anymore. So here's this very dramatic poem about the deep heart issues I was having as a reader before I realized I needed these. So, and maybe you can take it seriously even though you know it's secret. I don't know. The Death of the Reader. I have not read a book since my divorce, or I have been a bad reader and have read books, but have not finished them. Or, I may or may not have read some books, but only those I read as a child, and those to my son. Or, I have picked up books in order to love them, but have been unable to. I have loved so many books, and by that I mean novels, those books that are to lose oneself inside, to hide in a duck blind, to hide behind a door with an axe, to hide in a tree with a friend, to crush a bird nest in the fist, to watch the smallest shells fall through the sunlight, to pick up a gun and fire it by accident and kill your 10-year-old twin, your father running through the tall grass like he is underwater. You have never seen him run so fast. Even hiding in the farmhouse, fantasizing about a floor that can be hosed clean. Mostly, though, the duck blind, and being caught there, my long dress having trailed the mud, and later my death there in the second-floor bed, my eyes two awful things, my death a black thing. This is the 10th poem I have written about my death, or at least the death of the reader, or at least the death of the reader who cannot read books, only poems. A poem can break your heart in the short term, and over, in the same way and in others, the shards falling through the tree limbs to the pasture below. This is the heartbreak I am after, not the one after the marriage, the long marriage, the 40 open acres of marriage, the 50-page ending. Just the snapping open of a valve, the chamber squeezing like a fist, the heart breaking like a bird's egg, untended, desiccated, sparkling in the evening light, so beautiful, so light and diaphanous, it almost doesn't fall. And the other secret about this poem, which is called Bone China, is when I was writing it, a thunderstorm whipped up in the home I was working in, and the wind whipped up at the very end of when I was writing the end of this poem, and a 30-foot tall section of maple tree fell in the windstorm right next to the window where I was working in the middle of writing the last few lines of it. So every time I look at this poem, I get this moment of fright. No wind, though, and no thunder tonight, right? Okay. Bone China. I raise a glass at a friend's house. Everyone toasts their day, and I toast this day that is not a day. I raise a glass. I always wanted a long marriage. When we built a home, the foundation was too high, and the house became a ship. You know how ships are. I found myself always on the bow. There is little to say beyond that. I was on the bow. The waves were a giant hayfield. I watched the stars. I wondered what a sextant was. I leaned my hips against the porch rail during storms. Yes, of course, my hair whipped in the wind and mist. Sometimes I wore a dress. I was a tragic figure. I watched for land. Today, though, we toast other things. Not my wedding anniversary, which no longer exists, like the marriage. I wonder if everyone can see the black hole of it right next to me. We raise glasses to our health, the weather, new jobs. The back deck is old and weathered. The children captain inner tubes and capsize in the pool below. We toast new tattoos, phone apps, things we should get to someday, upcoming trips, the late June sky. Let's raise our glasses to this little beast next to me, my little emptiness. See how it follows me around today? I can't help wanting to offer it something. The world says china. That is our gift. The best china is made from bone. Mix the bones of cows with clay and feldspar. My friends keep going around the circle, offering wishes and clicking pints, while in some alternate universe, he and I, not the wedding but the man himself, continue what we had abandoned. I hold out my hands, which are full of bone, and he holds out his, and we grind them, those tools, down to bone ash, then slurry. Before long, we are tired, like we always were, and nap under the black willow. This is a kind of dance that happens in other worlds, where what is on the inside is turned to the outside, and little by little we become ugly and strange. Our bones become racks, and the wind comes through them. The music is old. When we wake up, we are tangled, useless, our bones confused and mixed in a heap. When the rain kicks up, we are already translucent. Everything has been ground to a powder, and we can do nothing, not one single thing. The bones of cattle are greater than we are. In the end, I am a platter. I lose track of what he becomes, but I know that if you flick our edges with your thumb, we ring like bells. I always wanted a long marriage, grown children organizing surprise parties every 10 years, tins of casseroles lined up on tiny sternos. When I set out my dinner plates later, way up north, and the manure trucks amble by late into the summer day, I hold each plate up to the light to see my hand through it. The Indian paintbrush is blooming. I am just in from a walk, and the mallow reminds me of those years. I rang a bell in a high white church one day. The cows were lowing in the heat. The whole world seemed translucent, and I a fine white powder blowing away. So I was also at the Studio Center this past fall, though not with the group of folks who are here. And one of the things I found writing in a studio and living next to a river and having not much else to do besides sit in a chair and look at a desk and look at a river and talk to artists was that my poems started to turn into artifacts, I guess. One of the ones I'm not going to read today is an elegy for a woman who turns into a chair, just actually becomes the chair, because what else do you do if you sit all day writing poetry but become the chair that you're in? This is a poem where the brother turns into a gallery showing of artwork. So that's the influence of the Studio Center. I think I need to live my life in order to be a writer. Otherwise, I don't know. Things get very strange. The brother sits for a life drawing class. The sun is out and high, and the day is early. The windows in the studio are clean, and so the light is white, white light. The brother shows up early and walks the room, touching things. He is building thoughts. How can the world be this beautiful? He brushes over wooden mannequins and stacks of palettes and tins of brushes and knives. Everything is a relic. There are paintings of landscapes he thinks he knows. He removes his shoes and clothing and wraps a drop cloth around his hips. This is quick cash. The students file in. He sits on a platform. In many ways, this is an escape. They ask him to choose a focal point, and so he spends the next hour watching the clock. He has always watched the clock and never understood it, and so he is an expert in déjà vu. In this hour, he becomes many-dimensional. He is drawn from all sides, and the composite witness heats his chest to a small fire. This he knows already from needles. Everyone can see that he is beautiful. In the sketches, he is an icon, a collage of bones and syringes, a man like a smoke tree, his edges smudged until they are white. He is afraid, his cheeks are drawn, his eyes will follow you. There is another half hour. The students make him more spindled and lank and wiry until he is almost a machine. Some break the machine to look more like him. They draw hands all over him, which in the language of easels means love. The students are young, Over the years, the sketches will become sturdier. They will become installations and sculptures and paintings of all kinds. One will become a mobile like a bird. Because I think he will die before me, I collect all of them. I build a room for my brother and paint it white. I build him pedestals and good lighting. I move my best chair in so I can spend days with him. I come to understand. I begin to think I, too, am an artifact. I become alabaster. People cease to understand me. There is nothing about this life, and so I stop saying anything. My words would be alabaster, too. The curator calls the exhibit forgiveness, for lack of a better word. One day, frescoes appear on the walls. A thin wash of ghosts spot the landscape with their hands held out. I'll read two more poems if I'm still, I'll read one more poem. I think I'll read one more. One of the things that I think about when I write poems is that I tend to write long poems. And so as a practice of trying to fight against that inside myself, I have a tiny project related to Dorothy Wordsworth, whom I love. And her story is really compelling to me. She is a sister, of course, of William Wordsworth and wanted to be a poet, wanted to be a writer. And much of her work in her journals, which are just beautiful writing, became the inspiration and even the drafts for some of William Wordsworth's poetry. And the journals weren't discovered until the 1930s, I believe it was, when they were found in the barn where they had lived at Dove Cottage. And so I have this fantasy of letting her be a writer. I don't know why I think I get to do that, which is kind of strange. But I like to take her work and her entries about her walks through the countryside and make reductions of them, make tiny little poems out of them. And the rules are that I don't know if they're any good, but the rules are that I have to take the words in order from the journals and try to construct a poem by carving away much of what she's written and see if I can let a poem come out of her journal entry. This one is called A Rainy Morning. She had kind of a debilitating love of her brother, who wasn't able to go to his wedding on the day he was married, and so maybe that comes out in this poem. A Rainy Morning, the epigraph by Dorothy Wordsworth. It was a sight I could call to mind at any time. A rainy morning, I took my breakfast, a little Chaucer, and then walked. It was wind everywhere, as along the lane. Our birch tree was the gusty wind, the sun upon it, the wind a flying shower. It was a tree in branches, was water. The sun went in, a shower, a rainbow, which spanned the island, the village, catkins coming out, the alder. We came over the stepping stones. I found it not easy to get over the stepping stones. Reached home. William walked to John's Grove. I went to meet moonlight, but it rained. He had been terrified by a sudden rushing. Wind seemed to bring earth, sky, lake, as if to enclose him. It was the moon and the moonlight, the stone man upon the hill. Every tooth and every edge of rock, the man a giant watching. The hill seemed perpendicular, the darkness so distinct. Thank you.